That's crazy. So it was like born out of a fear of not having anybody's like see your writing on the page.
To this day, I'm so scared that I'm gonna like lose a notebook and someone's gonna find it. Like I just don't.
And you'll be exposed.
Yeah, for somebody that's they'll read it. Like nobody's gonna read it and be like, "What?" Like you're gonna be like, "Is this a second language for her? Like what is this?"
I fucking hate this part of starting a podcast.
What the introing in front of somebody?
The intro, it's like for some reason, because this is new still, but for some reason it's like the 3, 2, 1, you're on. I'm sure you're used to it being a comedian where it's like you got to suddenly go and turn on.
This is I like podcasts because there's no prep, and if it sucks, it's not my problem. Nobody paid. You got it for free. I feel nothing but relaxed.
It's just like like the risk reward is pretty good. Like if it does really well, it's like good for you, right?
Yeah.
But if it doesn't, I guess it's no big deal.
Like I had I did like a comedian's podcast like 3 years ago. And a young comic in Detroit yesterday was like, "Oh, that was like a really good podcast and really helped me." And I was like, "Don't remember it. I'm glad it did something.
Oh
like
my
it was
gosh,
in and
you
out."
don't even remember like.
I have no memory of any podcast
Holy
I've ever
shit.
done.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah, I just black out.
Well, I do hope you remember this one in this weird kooky place.
Yeah, no, this one is scary.
Is it really scary? I haven't heard that vibe. Most people are like, it's got, but it does, like, it has that like haunted vibe to it, I guess. Yeah,
I love it. As somebody that like loves art, I think that's one of the reasons I even like the theater is that there's like, it feels like there's a story to it, and there's some kind of cultivation and thought in it. So I love it, but it is dark. This is a moody green. This is like forest, lost in the forest green, right? And then you know everything is very low lighting. Yeah. Where that if we had, there's a part of me that feels like if there was like a black light, we would find blood. That's all I'm saying. that's all I'm accusing you of.
Okay. Yeah. No, I can totally see that. But yeah, it's weird because it's like I love antique stuff, like dark stuff, like because like you said, it feels like there's a history to it, you know, like if you take an old piece of furniture and like just imagine it being, you know, claw-footed things. Like I love that because you imagine like how many households has this been in, you know, like how many things has it seen, and that's sort of why we gravitate towards it. But from the perspective of like a place of mystery and murder, I totally get it.
I love antiques. Like I don't know when that happened, but I just like it's not like anything. You don't really realize what your style is. Like I could probably, I feel like I could decorate for you. Like it doesn't take much to kind of look around and be like, oh, I think I know your aesthetic. Yeah. But I don't know if I could describe my aesthetic yet. I just know that like I go to antique stores and thrift shops all throughout the country and the world, and I'll see something and I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna lose all my money from my gig tonight because I found this. But so my best friend from high school, she lives on a farm in upstate New York, and I was staying at her place, and I walk up her steps, and she has this kind of like couch, like things like kind of like that, but like it's like long. It's like both like a chair and a bench, but it's also like a little couch. And I became obsessed, and I literally was like, old couch like thing. Like I started looking it up, and it turns out it's a gossip bench from the 40s and 50s, where it's like it's a little bench, and then next to it you would put your phone book and you would put the phone, and that's where you would sit. And I became obsessed with it. I showed it to my sister. My sister became obsessed. I looked for them online, and because she got it from like her mother was going to throw it out, but it was her grandmother's, and it was like this lime green. Everything about it, I was like, I need to find this. So every time I went to a different city, I would look for this gossip bench. I looked for it all online. I could tell that it was between like $300 and like $300 to $1,000 depending on where, but like there weren't many of them. And everywhere I went, I would like look for them. Even though like if I was in Ohio, I can't afford to have this thing shipped. And who do I think I am?
Shipping probably is more than the cost of it.
But I became obsessed with it. And then one day I had to do my taxes, and I had been avoiding it so much that it was going to become a problem. And I told myself I can go and walk and go get a fancy cup of coffee, which was like a 15-minute walk. And then I had to go do my taxes. And it was a block away from the coffee shop, and it's this antique store. and they were having this big mid-century sale. And there was a brown version of the Gossip Bench. And I literally, it was outside, and I ran inside. I go, is that Gossip Bench for sale? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee and make an emergency phone call. I'm coming back for this. I'm 99% sure. Can you give me 5 minutes? He's like, okay. And I called my sister, and I was like, I have a vintage emergency. I was like, and I tell her about it. It's $600. I should not be spending. I'm literally doing my taxes to find out what kind of fucked up situation I'm in. But I've been looking for it for 3 years. And she goes, I'm on the phone with Mom, and this isn't an emergency, but you should get it because I've never had you be so aggressive in my life. She was like, get it. And I was like, okay. Should I ask anybody else? She's like, no. My sister's very irresponsible with money, so that's why I called her mostly. And so I ran in. I asked him again. He's like, I'll give it to you for $500. I was like, it's sold. I was like, I'm going to come back. I was like, I'm giving you the money now. I have to figure out how to get this home because it was like long. And I ended up getting a skateboard that my boyfriend bought me, and I put it on a skateboard. And with my ass in the air, I pushed it down the street because I didn't want to pay for a cab. And it's my favorite thing I've ever bought. And that's the vibe. Is
Gossip chair.
But it has to be like. I almost don't think about it because as soon as you start being like, it's like, I don't need anything.
Sure.
You don't need, and I live in a tiny apartment, but it's and then I had to go to I pushed it in every single room to figure out what room it could fit in.
Like you're just going to make it work no matter what. The first step was getting it.
Oh, there's no way. And then I can't tell how many people are like, oh my God, would you ever sell this? I was just like, you can't even sit on it. Like, this is mine. This is my Gossip Bench.
That's so awesome. That's like, I don't know if I believe in manifesting, but like that is manifesting. It took you 3 years to manifest that thing.
And it's in really good condition. And it was like, and then the guy told me about it. It's like from Sears. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like from like Sears and Roebuck. You know what I mean? From in like the 40s and 50s.
It's a legitimate antique.
Yeah, but it's also weird to think about it in the sense that like as I get older, there's people that are like, me and my sister always go, this is super vintage. And it's really just, it's just out of fashion. Like it's not really vintage as much. And it's like, oh, this was just something that was in a catalog. I know that sounds weird to say, but like it was probably something that like most people could afford, and it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, it wasn't like in a rich person's house only, right?
Yeah. It's not fancy. There's nothing. It's like it's not even. It's like it's not leather. It's what do you call it? Like
velvet?
No, it's not velvet. It's what's the word?
Like what fabric?
I'm gonna feel
almost like a curtain fabric.
No, because it's not fabric. It's like you could wipe it down. Think of like
a faux leather.
Yeah, but it's like it's not fancy. But it's like, I love it so much. And that's like, you start to realize like some stuff is just like, oh, we just would never need this. Or it was just like a certain time. Or like there's something quaint about like we're on our phones all the time. But this was a place where you sat down and you would like talk to your friend or your boyfriend for too long in this one chair. And it's not comfortable. There's nothing comfortable about it.
Yeah.
It's just different. It doesn't look like anything else.
Yeah.
And that's...
But I think that goes along with what we're saying. It's like a part of history. It reminds you of that every time you see it, too.
Yeah, and it kind of takes... Cool. It's kind of what I like about traveling. Like, I'll go to a country, and I'll be like, oh, I'm not home. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I did a tour in Pakistan, and I've never had more culture shock in my life. I was like, I'm not home. And it takes you... I think we're always going like everywhere looks the same. It's like a Starbucks next to a Lululemon next to a Target, and
no matter where you are in the States,
yeah. And so like even like being in Detroit yesterday, like they have really beautiful architecture, and you just have this moment where you're like, oh, I'm somewhere different. Mm-hmm. I'm somewhere where people had a different idea of how you should live, and I think that's like how I feel about antiques. Is like, oh, this was like everything I'm sure was shit because everything's always shit, but their furniture was fun.
Yeah, I wonder what we use now that'll be like total antiques in the future,
I wonder because
everything.
I mean, sure, the same idea that like I don't think in the future we'll be holding anything. Like our phones are like always
totally
in our hands. I almost think a little bit like WALL-E. I love Pixar. Mm-hmm. So like they're just kind of floating and things kind of float with them and their screens and stuff. Like
absolutely.
I just feel like everything is gonna like kind of atrophy, and there's gonna be like robots holding our stuff. I hope to never carry anything again as somebody that's slightly sweaty right now.
So you want to float around in one of those like little vehicles and
yes, I would love to
and like have a little shake like put
I would like a
mouth.
Robot to like put it to my mouth so I really have to do absolutely no work.
Yeah.
As somebody that barely works, I'm really striving to do even less.
I don't believe that. You're like a marathon runner, aren't you? Or are you still doing
I don't do
running?
it as much anymore. Yeah, I did. I probably stopped running marathons maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. But
Why'd you stop?
I don't know. It became harder just with traveling. Like
Yeah, of
truly
course,
every summer I would start training, which is the perfect time because your schedule slows down. But as soon as like the end of the summer started, it's like you would have something in your schedule to run 15 miles and it's like I'm tired. I don't have time.
Yeah.
And you start doing these marathons with almost no training and it hurts and it started to be like I'm already tired and this is going to make me more tired. And then I did it for 15 years, and I think I just started to be like, I think I'm ready to move on.
Yeah.
And I got into CrossFit, and now I like cults, apparently. So I just went from like a running cult to like a picking stuff up and throwing it down cult.
Yeah. Do you miss that community? It's kind of a community, isn't it?
I do, and I actually do want to start getting back into running because I think with CrossFit is so hard that I feel like all I'm trying to do is survive, as opposed to running. You really do kind of like long distance running. You do kind of get like a runner's high, and you're like, at least for me, my brain drifts off, and I think of joke ideas. I solve joke problems. I get more organized. I think about how to I'm kind of having a fight with this friend. How would I handle this differently? Like I just feel like my brain opens up in a creative and alternate way that sometimes people feel when they, when you shower and your brain drifts off, or even just like driving.
And you have a lot more blood flow to your brain too.
Yeah, I would like to think at some kind of peak performance that is not often happening. But it was both physically and mentally therapeutic. But I also know I was absolutely running from my feelings in a lot of ways. And I think as I've become emotionally healthier, I didn't need to beat the shit out of myself that way.
Yeah, I do relate to that because I've run a little bit in the past, and I definitely relate to that. But I've never thought about it from that perspective. I've definitely used it running as I need to relax. I need to de-stress. I need to feel better. And it's just one of those things that you're going to feel, I feel better after I run every time,
I've never regretted a run.
No. Yeah. Maybe I could ask you some advice. I kind of this is crazy. I signed up last year. I've never run a marathon. Okay. I signed up for the Chicago Marathon. Nice. Well, here's the deal.
You're my knees are broken.
No, well, it's in a month. And I signed up last year. I was I just super busy. The most running I've ever done is probably maxed out in 2022. I was running 3 or 4 times a week. Probably most 14 miles is the most I've ever run. But a decent pace. I thought for myself, I was running 7.5 minute miles and I got up to 14 miles. So I was the peak of my whatever running ability. Never ran more than that. And then then the next year, 2023, I didn't get to run as much, kind of went downhill, running once a week or so. And then I signed up for the marathon. I'm I'm going to get it together. I haven't done any running.
You've gotten nothing together. It's
a month away. Now I'm and the reason I started slowing down was because I was getting acid reflux really bad every time I ran. Okay. It was literally every time I would run, my chest would burn. I went and got it checked out. I was is there something I need to worry about here? With my heart or something? And I got checked out. It seems like it's just some acid reflux, but it's super bad. So I'm partially toning it back because of that. But I'm trying to decide right now. It's I've signed up for this thing. I'm going to feel horrible if I don't do it, but I've done 0 training.
I mean,
am I going to mess myself up? I'm 45,
Well, I think the least you can do is start now. And I've always felt if you can run 13, you can run 26. Okay. Right? If you can run half, you can finish it. Your goal is clearly, you're not going to do magic, right? The goal would just be to finish it.
I don't even care about the time. It would just be can I run this without injuring myself to where now I'm not going to be, it's going to take away from my family and my work, that would be stupid to do something like that.
The best marathon I ever did, I ran it. I would run 2/3 of it, or like 2/3 of a mile or almost a mile, and then I would walk for a couple of minutes, and then I would run, and that's how I got through the whole thing. And it was my best time because I actually gave myself little breaks. I stopped trying to like throw Gatorade in my face and like, you know, whatever. And I'm a peer. I've always had to pee. I'm never having, like, I just have, there's nothing I can do. I'm not like a guy.
You're not going to like wear diapers. So
yeah, no, I've never been like that crazy, and I've never been fast. I mean, I think my best marathon, I think I was 21 or 22, and it was 4.5 hours. And that was like amazing to me. And I never got close to it again. But for me, when it stopped being about like personal PR and even just like what I liked it, because I've done the New York City Marathon twice. I did the Marine Corps Marathon like 6 times. That's in DC. I did a couple Jersey marathons. When it started to be, I remember doing the New York City Marathon and people were like taking selfies and like, you know, high-fiving their friends and like eating cake on the side because a friend was cheering. Like it was like a party to people. And I was like, oh, I'm like business mode Liz about this thing that I'm not even good at. Like I'm not good at doing this. I'm not fast. Nothing magical is going to happen. And when I started to kind of just make it enjoyable. So the last time I did the New York City Marathon, I ran it with my buddy Seton Smith. Do you know Seton? He's a New York guy. Opens for John Mulaney a lot.
Oh, cool.
But we did it for the New York Comedy Club that was doing it for a charity that was helping with like cancer research. And we ended up both not training very well. He does like MMA. I was starting to do like CrossFit at the time. So we're both like too muscle heavy to be doing long distance.
Right.
But at the end we didn't. And we ended up running 95% of it together, and like it was so much fun. And then we had a bunch of like, and we told people about it, and we were raising money, so a bunch of people like had signs and stuff, and like there were different parts around the race where we would see people and give hugs and take selfies, and it started to be more like a weird way to bond as opposed to I have to trudge through this marathon because for some reason I keep deciding every year that this is where my value is, or I'm not, you know, and I think
it's like part of what defined you.
I like people knew me in the community as like a runner. Like people would ask me what shoes to buy and like how to go, like, you know, I'm doing couch to 5K. Is that like smart? And like asking me all this advice. And I was like, I don't know. I'm not dealing with my feelings and I like doing this. And it was always something that I was like passionate about, but it is weird as, I kind of started to like enjoy it. And, you know, in the beginning, you know, when I was younger, it was all about losing weight. And then it started to be about like being better at running. And I started to use like both, like I was dissatisfied where I was in my career and in different parts of my life, but running, it was this thing I had control over. And then as other things started to fall in line, and like I said, I felt healthier, it became actually just enjoyable, or a thing I did to like relax. And then eventually I didn't feel a desire to do it, and I knew I needed some kind of other physical outlet because I've always been somebody, like I walked here, it took an hour. I slightly regret it because I'm sweaty, but like I was just like, I haven't worked out in 2 days, and I've been in my hotel room all day, and I just need to like move. So I know there's a little bit of like the zoomies, like I just get I get like people zoomies, and I just need to move, and I think I just had to transfer to something else. But I think at least try to train, or like
No, I'm definitely going. So I ran like 4 miles the day before yesterday for the first time in a long time, just to see like where I'm at. I'm super sore from that, and I think so tomorrow I'm going to give it a couple days, and I'm going to start building it up to see, like you said, this is my rough plan, if I can get to like 13, 14 and not feel like broken. If I can do that within like a week and a half, like I'll probably do like 7 or 8 tomorrow maybe. And then if I can go to 10, I don't know if this is a smart plan, you know, but that's kind of like my,
I think slowly build it up over the month and you'll kind of know. And then if you I do think like if you kind of throw out everything other than just finishing, and don't do it fast. Like if you're doing it like 7 something
No, I couldn't. I would destroy him. No, I would.
You could do like a 10-minute mile and have it just be like a jog. And then I felt like that stuff was always mental. Like once I got past 13 miles, I was like, oh, I'm halfway done. And even if I felt like my whole body felt like shit, I'm like, I'm pretty much done. Like I just kept saying that after, like I was at 15, I was like, I'm pretty much done. 16 and a half, oh, I'm pretty much done. Like it just like kind of, once you hit that like halfway point, I just felt like it was like,
that was a good mental trick for you.
Yeah, I mean that's like almost everything I do. I'm like, oh, I'm pretty much done. And
it's over. It's basically
yeah. I was just like, okay.
I don't know if that would work for me because I'd be like, oh, I'm done, and then my body would just give up.
As long as you don't stop, because I remember the first time I did it, I truly did hit a wall at like 22 miles, and I remember like just walking, and then you just become like stone. And it was like, oh, I don't know if I can start up again.
Yeah,
and it was like, I think the first marathon I ever did, I was 19, and it took like over 6 hours, like something crazy.
Oh, wow.
My uncle, in the for the New York City Marathon, they list every single runner in I think the New York Times, or at least like some paper, and my uncle bought it, and it's in the order of people finishing. He was like, you were on the last page. I was like with 80-year-olds.
Oh my God.
Like they were rolling up the signs when I was finishing. Like I remember I was a mess.
I've been there too. My wife and I recently did like a marathon bike ride, like a 26 mile bike ride for charity thing. I was on my mountain bike, and there's all these like 70, 80-year-olds on like these super powered like I mean, they're not electric or anything, but they're like fancy, road
where they're really
bikes.
light and like
they had all the gear and skin. I'm in like basketball shorts and my mountain bike, and I had no idea how hard it would be. Like we came in dead last. My wife and I came in dead last. I'm really proud
of you guys.
And my ass hurt so bad. Like I don't know if it's a bone. I have a bony ass or something.
No,
but the seat was like
all bike seats. I don't know who they're made for, and I just don't understand why they won't fix them. Like I would love biking if they would just make a seat. And I get that you have to like move your legs, but everything about biking, like there is a real like. The same way like stand-ups don't really like improv comics, like there's definitely like runners don't like bikers. You know what I mean? Like there's a little bit like, oh, you need your fancy little, you need to clip in, and then you need your little fancy shorts and your little bike, and like we could just put on like shitty shoes and go for a run.
Right. Yeah, the gear is pretty funny if you look at it. It's like super spandexed out.
Yeah,
like,
and they're just like
and they have the butt pads. See, that was the thing. Like the butt pads would have helped. Like if I had some butt pads, I don't think
now you know.
It was. Yeah, now I know. I'm getting those. I understand the butt pads now. I won't make fun of them anymore. That's awesome. Well, let's talk about some comedy. What's your tour? You're on tour right now. How's it going?
It's good. I taped a special last Sunday, so like I'm in this like weird.
Oh, congrats!
Thank you. I feel good about it. It's why my nails are fancy.
Hell yeah.
I'm very like I just have fancy nails once a year. I call it my wedding. Like I'll get my hair done and I get my nails done, and I look nice for like a week. And this is like a blowout that's really dirty. But it's always weird after I tape something because I very easily get bored, and I'm like, I don't want to do these jokes anymore. But I haven't written, like I need to, like even tonight it'll be about 60% thing I just taped, and I already have like maybe 20 minutes of new stuff, and then I have even newer stuff that I'm trying to work on. But like I'm always this part is like a little awkward because like emotionally I don't feel connected to this stuff anymore. But I'm also very excited because I love writing, and I like I turned over my last hour really quickly. I wrote a new hour in 6 months, and then I ended it with a story.
And that's a short process.
I've never written that fast in my life. And there was a couple of things that led to it. Just like one, I'm always writing, so I would say like April of last year, my hour was done, but I couldn't get a venue until September. So while I was touring, I was still like writing, but I knew this hour was done, and I like probably had maybe 15 new minutes by the time I like taped the hour. And then 3 weeks later, I did this show called Crash and Burn in Minneapolis. It's at Acme, and 4 comics work on 20 minutes. So like Wednesday, you go on stage, you do 20 minutes you've never done, and then you workshop it with the other comics. And then the next day, you whatever you fixed, you do it again, and then you just keep doing it. And by by Saturday, you have to be off the books, and it has to be like your new 20 minutes. And each night you keep polishing it. So I wrote 3 weeks after I taped a special, I wrote another 20 minutes. So I was like, it was just very weird. And I think I ended up being here the next week. And it was so strange to be like, oh, I just taped a month ago and I have a half hour of new material. I was like,
that's crazy.
Yeah. And then some stuff happened in my life. I had a 10-minute story that I ended up working on in December. And then next thing you know, I had a new hour super quick. And you start to be like, do I have a new hour? Like you start to be like, do I? But I don't know if I can do that again. It was just kind of oddly serendipitous with this show and whatever. But like this part of touring is kind of my favorite. Like I like the build. I really love the art of building a new hour. Like it's fun to me. And like even my boyfriend was like, oh, what are you going to call this one? I was like, I don't know. I was like, if I could name it today, it might be called this, but I have no idea what this hour is even going to look like or be shaped into in even a couple of months from now.
That's cool. I like how the process is like evolving for you and you're just kind of like letting it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you normally do? How do you normally name a show? Like, does it come out early on and is the show built around that, or does it come out of it?
I think because I like naming pets. I like giving my friends nicknames, and I like naming an hour. Like I clearly like, and I like weird names. Like I have a list. If you had a child or an animal today, I would be like, I have 16 names if you want suggestions. I think for me, it's something weird, but something that also encapsulates it. Like this hour I just taped is called Space Camp. I mentioned space twice. It has nothing to do with space. It has, but I mention it, and when people realize why it's called Space Camp, it's going to be kitschy and fun and like tongue in cheek. And then the set design is all space, like it's ridiculous. I have stars. I have a background of the solar system. Like I lean super into space. It has nothing to do with space.
It's awesome,
but it's fun. Or like the special before was called Murder Sheets, which is clearly like this made up phrase, but like. It was,
but there's a story that goes along with that in your set with Murder Sheets.
Yeah,
right?
There's a silliness to it. There's an anger, and to me, while maybe I feel like the essence of that joke, that joke itself is called Murder Sheets, is kind of who I was throughout the entire hour, and I think the silliness of the joke that is Space Camp encapsulates the silliness of this new hour. So it's really like a line usually or a name of a joke that represents who I am when I was writing that entire hour. So like some hours are real, like, so the one before Murder Sheets is called The Ghost of Academic Future. And that's just like a line in a really ranty joke about hating math and just feeling lied to, that like, you know, nobody's doing more than third grade math. Like, why was I punished and made to feel like I was never going to amount to anything when we're not using any of this? Right. We're not using any of it. And it's this long, and like people love this joke. It's an aggressive joke, but people love this joke, especially if anybody's like me. Like I'm dyslexic. I probably have dysgraphia as well. Like school was hard. It made me feel stupid. And I didn't really need, like, half the stuff I didn't need. I'm doing pretty good for somebody that's pretty dumb. And that's almost like everything is kind of a lie. Is like, there's a lot of breakup material in that hour. And it's a little bit like, this is all like a charade. Like, what are we doing? Like, so I think that's really where the naming comes from. It's just like how, like something silly that encapsulates the entire hour. And nobody has to know that but me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, you know what I mean? The same way that you might name your dog Bethany, and people are like, why'd you name it Bethany? And you're like, I don't know, it's a Bethany. Like, just look at her. Like, that's how I feel.
Right. But I think it does, like, if people were to watch the special and, like, it probably connects, I mean, for them and helps tell the story.
Yeah, so, like, I open with a ghost joke. Like, so even the fact that I reference ghosts later, like, that kind of comes together. Space Camp, I later in the hour reference space again. You know what I mean? So there's still, like, some, but it's loose, it's made up, it's my own rules.
I think that's kind of the key, right? That it's like, this is your creation, right? You're not doing it because you think it's some formula that I think you can get into that trap as a creative in any realm. Like, what do other people, what is going to be successful? What do other people want to see or hear? What should I do? Instead of just finding it out of your own creativity and being true to that.
Yeah, and my second album is called Mind Over Miele, and I hate it. Like, I absolutely hate the name. I named it because I did the show in Edinburgh for the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and I was in London, and I was given advice by managers and stuff like that, and everything in the UK is like playing off names, and I kind of was playing with the idea of my last name kind of being like a melee and having like meltdowns, and it was all about like, there's a lot of talking about mental illness in that hour. And now I love the album cover, but when I look at the name, I was like, oh, I wish I called this like Meltdown or something. Like, I hate it. Like, and it's kind of too late, and it doesn't matter, and nobody cares but me. But like, that was like the first time I listened to other people about naming it, and I wish I didn't.
And you listen to others about that. Yet I find this I totally relate to this too, because like when I was starting this theater, I literally just had a space. I got the space. I didn't name it yet. And I was like, I'm going to start a theater company. And I like registered an LLC under Rowan Theater Company just because I thought the name was cool. And I spent endless time, probably a year, trying to find a cool name, like something that I wanted. And it never felt right. Like, it never felt right. And I never put it out there. And it wasn't until I was forced to, like, it was just about like almost right before we were about to put on our first show and invite the public in for the first time that like I found the name The Den, and I was like, that's it. And then I felt good about it. And it's just a feeling, right? It's like, that feels right. It has meaning, but I think it reminds me of what you're talking about, because it's like, it is important to you. Everybody else, like when I hear that, I'm like, Mind Over Miele sounds kind of cool, like that, especially if you're dealing with like, you know, mental health stuff, kind of like that sounds like a cool name to me. But right, for you, it's important for you.
Yeah, and to this day I hate it. And there's crazy. Nothing, and you go, all right, it is what it is, and I'm not going to change it. I named it at that time, and that's what it's known for, and what have you. But it's almost when people ask me, how do I know a joke is done? And I was like, I don't know, it's just done.
Yeah.
It's just done. They're like, well, is it when it gets laughs? And I was like, well, that's not always. Sometimes they never get laughs. And I'm still like, it's done. I'm going to keep doing it. You can't stop me. But you just, I don't know. There's a moment where you're like, yeah, it's complete. I feel good about it.
Yeah.
I have nothing else to say. It's getting the reactions I want it to get.
Totally. And you're following your instincts there. That's awesome. So you started comedy when you were 16. That's super young. Why? What made you, like, how did you know so early on that's what you wanted to do?
I never liked anything else. Like, I liked movies. Like, I clearly liked like comedy movies, and I was really even though I'm dyslexic, I was really into reading. Like, my dad used to make us read to watch TV, and but he didn't care what we read, but I started to find the books that I liked, and I got really into reading. And then because I was dyslexic, I used to get extra help with my homework, and they would make us write, and I got really into writing. But I never wanted anybody to look at my writing because it's all spelled wrong, and everything about it was embarrassing. And I discovered stand-up when I was like 13, 14 years old, and it just all clicked. Like, oh, I can write, and nobody ever has to see it. Right. And I didn't even think about the performing aspect of it, which I think if I thought about it too long, I'd be like, oh no, I have to like be on stage. But instead I was just like, oh, I can write stories and I can tell them to people instead of them reading them. And I just became obsessed. And
that's crazy. So it was like born out of a fear of not having anybody's like see your writing on the page.
To this day, I'm so scared that I'm gonna like lose a notebook and someone's gonna find it. Like, I just don't.
And you'll be exposed.
Yeah, for somebody that's they would read it. Like, nobody's gonna read it and be like, what? Like, you're gonna be like, is this a second language for her? Like, what is this? So when I discovered, and then I also like my family was very much like speak when spoken to, and like everybody, like my parents were very much like an authority figure, and I was one of 5 kids. I helped my mom.
Oldest, right?
Second oldest.
Okay.
But my sister was gone a lot for like, she did gymnastics and she was more academically inclined and all that stuff. So I was kind of the surrogate helper, and I felt like the environment I grew up in was to keep small and keep quiet and just do what you were told. And then when I would watch stand up, I was like, oh my God, everybody has like these opinions. I wish I had opinions. Like I was so out of touch with like my thoughts and my feelings. Like I was just so shut down. And even when I started writing, it was such a weird exercise where like I didn't even know how to like express myself, like, and have like I just like it was very observational because I didn't have anything even connected to like, oh, I hate this. Like I didn't even have that feeling yet. And now I look at myself and I'm just like, I hate this and I hate that. Like I'm just like too strong of an opinion. But it was very much a long exercise in finding myself, even though I didn't know I think I knew I was lost, but I don't think I realized how lost I was.
Yeah. I mean, being the position you were in your family, it's surprising you ended up. It's usually the younger ones that end up being in the family. Not always. This is probably a stupid stereotype, but I feel like it's usually the younger people in a family that will try to end up being comedians or doing something.
I think I'm weirdly both an older sister and a middle child. So I have me, my little sister, my little brother are all the middle kids, and we're very close. We have a very similar sense of humor, and I think we're all very artistically inclined, as opposed to my older sister. She was like a nurse she's done just about everything, but she was a nurse for years. She now has an office job. My baby brother just became a lawyer. And then my little sister is a singer-songwriter. My other brother does like glass art and tufting and does like all this kind of like physical art. So I think the middle kids became like artsy and broke, which I think is the right way for the middle child to be. I don't know, like Greg is allowed to make money. I don't know if I'm allowed to make money.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm equal parts incredibly responsible and then deeply irresponsible. And I've always kind of somewhere.
Do you swing to extremes, or do you just kind of like find yourself in the middle?
A little bit swinging to extremes. I used to be very like the same way that I would like run marathons. Like I would like this day I'm going to run 3 miles. This day I'm going to run 6 miles. This day like that. I was the same way where I was like, I'm going to write this much. I'm going to write to this many bookers. I'm going to do this many road gigs. Like I was and like now as I've gotten older, I've kind of leaned more into the artsy part of me. Like I'm less responsible. I'm like still one of the more responsible comics you're probably ever going to meet. I can never not be on time. It would stress me out too much to not be on time. But I have leaned more in to experience and trusting myself a bit more and believing in myself, if I can even say that, and being a little more relaxed. And if I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. You know, like as long as I don't go to jail. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like I don't know if I have ADHD, but when I can't sit still, I've been like, well, it's not a sit still day. It's not a get shit done day. So like I've kind of leaned a bit more into whatever chaos is going on in my brain, as opposed to when I was younger, I had all these kind of things I would do so that I got stuff done so that I could progress my career. And now, because I don't actually know what the next step of my career is, I'm just kind of a little bit like, if I want to be artsy today, I'll be artsy. And if I don't, I'm not.
You can kind of let it go a little more.
A little bit.
Yeah. Let go. Nice.
Yeah. Sometimes.
When did you get that tattoo?
I got it with my little sister, I think 12 years ago.
Okay.
I don't remember, but I clearly had an issue with it. And now I've,
So what do you think made you like, it seems like you seem very ambitious to me, like especially like from a young age, like running, like deciding you want to be a comedian, like the way that you go after things, is very cool. Like, I think it's like, there are not a whole lot of people that have that trait from a young age, but I'm just curious to like why. And it seems like you've come to a place where you're trying to let that go a little bit and let things flow.
Yeah, I mean, I think I also was deeply unhappy most of the time. Like, I think I think a lot of my drive, I mean, my drive to do comedy was because I love it, but my path to accomplish certain things in comedy was to feel seen and feel valid and feel good enough and feel accepted. And it just felt like it didn't matter how far I got and what I did, that feeling never got accomplished. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, through therapy and through friendship and through, in some ways, accomplishing some of my goals and just, you know, doing this as long as I've done it, I don't hate myself as much. I feel better. Mm-hmm. I like my life. Like, there's definitely still things that I want. You know what I mean? Like, I would like to have a large enough fan base that, you know, I don't even have to worry if shows sell or not. You know what I mean? As opposed to, like, this has been my hardest year selling. This has been, since I've started headlining, this has been my worst financial year and my hardest ticket selling year. And I took it very personally until I told a friend, and she started sending me articles of musicians and comedians and every single person being like, this is my hardest year. This is the worst year to ever sell tickets. Like, because everybody's just feeling like an inflation crunch and everybody's like broke top to bottom. And, you know, I think first it hit my ego and, you know, my pocketbook. And then eventually I had to like work through that and then just kind of let it go. Like, if a show sold well, great. And if it didn't, like I told my boyfriend recently, I was like, this is going to be my worst financial year. And I think next year is also going to be bad. And I have to not let it affect how I value myself, but how I value my work. Right. Mm-hmm. So, my fan base isn't growing the way it is. I'm not drawing the way I used to. It, you know, it's not personal. You know what I mean? I'm in a group of like hundreds of comedians that talk about like social media and stuff like that. And every single person's like, this isn't doing as well as it used to. And this isn't working the way like everything's ever changing. But I think I'm able to somewhat handle things being not on the up and up the way it has been over the last 5 years, because I've let go of being so accomplishment driven, as opposed to, if this is it, if I peaked, pretty good life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm like fine. I'm a saver. I'm very fortunate that I was raised to be a saver. You know, I kind of look at the money I make right now, and I'm still doing okay, but like the money I make right now, I feel like a football player, and at any point my knee could, you know, go out, and this might be the only money I make my entire life, and let's be smart about it.
So don't spend it all right now.
Yeah, you know, like I really don't. I'm just not a spender, and I like saving. Like it's a great comic, Monroe Martin. He's really, really funny, and he has, I'm gonna butcher his joke, but he has a joke about like, if I won $1 million, they would be like, if you won $1 million, what would you do with it? And he was like, I would open my bank account every day and just look at it. Like he was like, because if you spend $1, you're not a millionaire anymore. He was like, I would literally just open up the app and look at it.
See that 1,000,000,000.
And that's kind of how I feel. Like, I'm a saver. I'm just like, oh, we're doing really. Look at me saving.
Yeah.
And I didn't.
That is a really lucky trait to just be built in with. And I did not have that early on, and that's you go through tough times if you don't have that sort of base. I mean,
I don't think I realized until recently how fortunate I am, because my dad raised me that way, and I wasn't making money for the first half of my career, so it was always like gig to gig. But then when I started to get royalties and make more money and you know, things got easier, I was like able to save and like have a plan for it. But my friends who started making money and doing better were like, I don't, like, I have money for the first time and I'm grateful, but I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm like, oh, let's talk to my dad. I was like, this is what I'm doing. And so like my dad's actually talked to a couple of my friends to be like, here's some basic things you can do now that you're making money. And it's like, my dad taught me never to go into credit card debt. And I'm also fortunate. Like, I mean, my parents paid for my college. I have tons of friends that are still in student loan debt. That's a privilege. I'm grateful for it. But I also have friends that their parents paid for college and they're in a butt ton of debt because they just spent money they didn't have.
I did the same thing early on. I mean, it's one of those things that if no one teaches it to you or kind of encodes it in your brain, like, you'll probably make that mistake in your 20s and maybe even 30s. And it took me like 10 years to get out of it and like get back on top. And now now I learned the lesson. I'm 45, and now I'm finally like, when I didn't, it's like, I wish I didn't have to go through all that, but I'm fine with it. I'm like, but it is really lucky that you have that,
But it's like I had to be, I know it's there because I was raised with it. Like my roommate who just started being my old roommate, he's just starting to be slightly better with money. But I remember he's freelance. He was a photographer and videographer. And I remember he was asking me financial advice and he goes, well, he's like, walk me through how you think about money. And I was like, okay, well, I get a gig. Let's say I get a gig for $500 and my rent is $1,000. That's half my rent. So now my only goal is to find at least another $500 gig, because if I can pay rent, I can find food money, I can find utilities money. I need to pay for my largest expense first. So when I was trying to book myself on my own, I would work super hard. And as long as I got the first $1,000, I would kind of back off a little bit. And then it was about, whatever, let's say every month I needed $2,500 to pay for everything that was there. It was just about getting as much money as I can till I hit $2,500. And then if I made anything over $2,500, that would go to the next month. I never was like, oh man, I'm flush right now. I'm like, especially because I've been doing this 22 years. July is shit. It's always shit. It'll always be shit.
Tough for a venue too.
It's always shit. The last week of June to the first week of August is shit. And then the holidays are shit. Before 2008, there used to be all these like corporate parties and stuff like that. And they came back a little bit, but they really didn't. So like I really make no money from like Thanksgiving to like, unless I get like a New Year's Eve gig, it would be the first week of January. So I have almost 2.5 months every year where I make $9. So if March is Women's Month, let's say I get extra work and I end up making $6,000 when my budget, like the only money I need is $2,500. Well, now I have 2 months and that's going to make up for July, even though it's only March right now. And I always did that to the point where like I was always saving for these months and I wouldn't calculate it other than that. So sometimes I'd be like, oh, I'm like doing pretty good. And I didn't even realize it, but I would never be like, I'm doing pretty good, whatever. I'm like, well, who knows? October could be a bad month. And I was like, so there was a little bit of scarcity. And even my therapist at the time was like, you can't always be safe. Like at some point you have to
At some point you need to take a vacation.
True.
Spend a little money.
And I didn't for years. And I feel like only in the last couple of years have I been a little bit like, now I don't even try for July. Like I used to like push it and I needed the money, or I just didn't want to relax. And now like, I got offered a gig. I was going to take 6 weeks off and I'll do stuff in the city and I have other ways of making money, but like, I'm not going to tour. And I remember a booker was like, hey, can you do this day in July? And it was smack dab in the middle of the 6 weeks off. And I was like, no, I don't want to. I was like, I don't want to fight it. I don't want to try. This year's been hard. I was like, I'll do it in September. He's like, oh, okay. And not being scared that person's not going to come back either. And that's the luxury of having a reputation and doing this long enough. But I think if anything, I'm just not living both creatively, financially, and like career-wise in scarcity mode. And I think again, that's also a luxury where somebody will offer me something. Like I got offered like a Don't Tell gig, and I was like, no. I didn't even try to negotiate. I was like, I literally was like, thank you so much. It's just not enough. And then they came back with a bigger number, and I was like, okay, now we're talking. I was like, if you do this plus travel, then I'll think about it. And it's like,
and then you did it, and then you landed it?
I don't know. They're still getting back to me.
Still doing it. Okay.
But I don't care. Yeah. And
that's a good position to be in.
It's a great position to be in because now I'm performing when I want to and when I feel like I'm being valued. And,
totally.
And not a lot of people reach that place. So even though I'm not exactly where I want my career to be, I'm in a place where most of the time when I perform, I'm either being compensated in a way that is exciting or I'm doing gigs that I want to do because I like it creatively.
I think that's totally the place to be. But that's also really smart, and I don't know if a lot of people understand where their value's at. I think you do have to gauge that appropriately. Some people are off one way or the other, right? And I think it's for the same way for a venue. Like it's the exact same thing. It's like a venue needs to understand where their value is to a performer. Why would a performer want to come and take this certain kind of deal? from you and they could get it somewhere else.
Yeah.
So what value are you bringing to them? You know, and that's a question that we try to ask ourselves and try to figure out here. It's super important to me to know, like, all right, where's our value? And like, there's a certain feeling I have a lot too about like that it's going to change and I'm going to have to adapt. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to have to adapt. I mean, at some point, like, the same way I talked about being like a football player that at any moment could have to, you know, unintentionally retire. I mean, we don't know where the live performance space is going to be. So as somebody that's a live performer and as somebody that creates a space, we both got hit during the pandemic because nobody could be inside and I couldn't travel and perform for people. But I think this new kind of issue, which is, do people have the extra money to spend on something that's not necessary in a time where everybody's, you know, eggs are more expensive, gas is more expensive. Like, so I think you always kind of have to adapt, whether it's giving the person more for their money or creating a different, shaping your space differently to what people desire. Like, right. You know, during the day, or, you know, on the weekends during the day, do you do a flea market, right? And at night it's a performance space. Or right now you do, I don't know if you have music here, but like if you're doing mostly comedy, would you open up the space more to theater? Like people that do like, you know, runs for a whole month as opposed to having a different person every weekend. Like you won't know until you can usually see it a little bit beforehand, but most of the time people have to kind of switch in the moment, just like the pandemic where it's like, oh, now we're doing comedy on Zoom or in parks or whatever. But I'm going through that right now as a performer, as somebody that, you know, I made most of my fan base online. I did a little bit of TV, but 95% of my success has been social media, to the point where my friends that have done Letterman and Conan and, you know, Last Comic Standing, they all of a sudden were like, oh no, I have to do what Liz is doing. And I was like, oh, I was doing this because nobody wanted me on TV. And then all of a sudden I was doing the right thing and I was kind of ahead of a curve. I'm not ahead of the curve anymore. I'm just not. I don't.
Everybody's doing it now. Everybody has to.
It's almost saturated. Yeah. You know, it's the other thing that's changed is I'm incredibly long-winded, if you haven't noticed, but I tell stories. So YouTube is a very good avenue for me, but at the time, Instagram had IGTV, and it was like 10-minute long videos. And the longer your video was, and the longer you watched that video, the more the algorithm rewarded you. So I would tell 6-minute stories. It was marketed as comedy. Everybody knows the punchlines at the end, and somebody would watch a whole 6-minute story. Sometimes hate watching it, but they still watch the whole thing. It. And they would leave a hate comment, which is still a comment. And I was having viral video after viral video because I live in a 4 to 8 minute space while all my friends were writing 1 to 2 minutes.
It's kind of a niche.
So what was happening is I couldn't get on late night because my stories are too long and they want like jokes. But IGTV, I'm telling these 8-minute stories and they're popping off and I'm getting 500,000 views, 2 million views. But as soon as IGTV died, I was like, oh no, my setups are 1.5 minutes and reels are 1.5 minutes. So I'll have people comment where they're like, there's no punchline. And I was like, I know, I couldn't get there. I was like, you have to go to YouTube. Like I was trying to get you to go to YouTube. So I had a heyday.
But even YouTube now, it's shorts
and they're not, and a minute's even shorter for me. Like I just am not quick.
So it's like the question is like, do you want to adapt to that? And then would you enjoy it? Is it worth that?
And that's what the other space is so like crowd work is a thing. I think it's starting to die down, but we had a heyday, or even before crowd work, it was roast battles. I like being nice. Yeah. I don't like being an ass. I've spent my whole life trying to be nice, wanting to be liked, and like now people are like, shit on your friends. And I was like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. So I skipped the whole roast battle because I didn't want to do it. And then crowd work started to be a thing. And I'm decent at crowd work. I'll talk to the crowd sometimes, but I'm a writer. I tell stories. I like doing long hours. It's not unless I feel like it enhances the bit, or I need to pull people in a certain way, or I, would have an especially rowdy crowd, I don't do it. And the thing is, now that I have a fan base, I rarely have rowdy crowds because my crowds know I tell long-winded stories that you have to pay attention to. So this crowd work thing started to happen, and I didn't want to do it. And I don't think artistically I need to do it. But with IGTV going and crowd working being the thing, now it's like, well, what are you bringing that's unique? And the answer was nothing. In this space, I'm not surviving, and I know that. And it's not going to be like this forever. It's already kind of dying down.
Things are changing so fast now. Everything evolves. Like, it's like a month or two, and it's like, who knows what's going to
Yeah, and I also don't think you need to do every trend. Like, if the trend is halter tops, if you look good in a halter top and you feel comfortable in a halter top, go wear a halter top. But I don't know if I have the shoulders for that, and I don't want to do it. So the same way I'm not going to jump on every clothing trend, I'm not going to jump on every creative trend if it doesn't feel authentic to me. But when you make those choices, you have to make other choices and get ahead of things, or find your space somewhere else. And sometimes for the first 10 years of my life, I was just trying to get my career. I was just trying to be funny and figure out who I was. It was the second 10 years that I really started to figure out what I wanted to do and what I could do on my own. And now, as things have changed and I have a little bit of success, I now have to do that again. And I don't know. I know what I don't want to do, and I think that is its own choice, and I think there's value to that. But this is the first time in probably 10 years I actually don't know who I want to be when I grow up now.
Yeah. But it sounds like you're in a good position, because as long as you're financially secure, right? We all need that, right? Safe and secure financially, then I think you're right with, you can't compromise your creative integrity, or if you try to break out of that too much just to do what you think is the right trend and bend yourself to that, I think you won't end up succeeding. You won't beat out the people that gravitate towards that naturally, that love that kind of thing. I think you lean into what you love, right?
And what you're good at. Like, if, I love bubble tea. And bubble tea, now everywhere I go, you used to never have bubble tea anywhere. And now every single city, doesn't matter where you go, has bubble tea. And if you were like, I guess we should sell bubble tea, it's like, well, if you do shitty bubble tea, now you're a place that does good drinks but shitty bubble tea, and maybe you're going to be known for the shitty bubble tea. And now it's not bubble tea, now it's like, I don't know, some other kind of beverage trend or whatever. So it's like, unless you're going to do a good job at it, why are you chasing it? Why don't you do the thing that you're good at and evolve and get better and change? But I don't think you need to weave in and out of what everybody's doing. There's people that are passionate about it and good at it, and they're going to go do it. Where's your space, right? And it can and should evolve, but if this is what you want to do forever, then I'm sure there's somebody out there for it. And that's the one nice thing about the internet, is you can be pretty niche now, and people will find you in a way that they couldn't find you before.
That's true. I think that's right on the money. We have got a show to do in about 45 minutes. Yeah. This has been a really great conversation. It's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit.
Yeah.
I look forward to the show tonight. Thanks for coming back to the Den, and I hope we can sit down again soon and talk more. It would be great. So,
yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Guys, thank you for sticking around and watching the episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Liz Miele is a fantastic human and an amazing comedian. If you want to follow her more, check out her website, lizmiele.com, for all her tour dates. We're also leaving links to all her social handles down below. Check her out, follow her. Also, like and subscribe if you got something out of this. Right now, it's super helpful for us as we grow, and your comments are invaluable if you have the time. Talk to you soon. Cheers.